The bustling streets of New York City pulsed with energy as the morning sun cast its golden rays across the towering skyscrapers. Amidst the chaos of honking taxis and hurried pedestrians, a petite figure in a well-worn waitress uniform hurried down the sidewalk, her long chestnut hair billowing behind her in the crisp autumn breeze. Sophia Martinez, a 25-year-old woman with kind brown eyes and a gentle smile, clutched her bag tightly as she rushed towards the Golden Spoon, an upscale restaurant nestled in the heart of Manhattan. Despite the challenges life had thrown her way, Sophia's spirit remained unbroken, her heart filled with hope and determination. As she entered the restaurant's back door, the familiar scents of sizzling bacon and freshly brewed coffee enveloped her. Sophia quickly made her way to the employee locker room, exchanging brief greetings with her coworkers as she tied on her apron and smoothed her hair into a neat ponytail. "Sophia! There you are," exclaimed Mia, a fellow waitress and Sophia's closest friend at work. "Mr. Thompson's been asking for you. Apparently, some VIP customers are coming in today, and he wants you to handle their table." Sophia's eyes widened with surprise. "Me? But why? I'm not even the most experienced waitress here." Mia shrugged, a mischievous glint in her eye. "Who knows? Maybe he's finally noticed how hardworking and charming you are. Just be careful, okay? I've heard rumors that these VIPs can be real nightmares." With a deep breath, Sophia steeled herself for the day ahead. Little did she know that this seemingly ordinary shift would set in motion a series of events that would change her life forever. As the morning progressed, Sophia moved gracefully between tables, her genuine smile and attentive service earning her grateful nods from satisfied customers. Despite the grueling pace, she never let her composure slip, treating each patron with the same warmth and respect. Just before the lunch rush, Mr. Thompson, the restaurant's portly manager, waddled over to Sophia, his brow furrowed with concern. "Martinez, listen carefully," he said in a low voice. "The Blackwood family is coming in for lunch today. They're one of our biggest investors, and it's crucial that everything goes perfectly. You're our best waitress, so I'm assigning you to their table. Don't let me down." Sophia nodded solemnly, determination etched across her delicate features. "I understand, Mr. Thompson. I'll do my best." As the clock struck noon, the restaurant's double doors swung open, revealing a group of impeccably dressed individuals. At the center stood Jonathan Blackwood, a tall, distinguished man in his late 50s, his salt and pepper hair perfectly coiffed and his designer suit immaculate. Beside him was his wife, Victoria, a statuesque blonde whose icy blue eyes surveyed the restaurant with barely concealed disdain. Following closely behind were their children, Alexander, a handsome young man who bore a striking resemblance to his father, and Cassandra, a willowy brunette whose haughty expression mirrored her mother's. Sophia approached the table with a warm smile, her heart pounding in her chest. "Good afternoon and welcome to the Golden Spoon. My name is Sophia, and I'll be your server today. May I start you off with some drinks?" Jonathan Blackwood barely glanced at her as he barked out his order for a vintage bottle of wine. Victoria's lips curled into a sneer as she requested sparkling water with a twist of lemon, while Alexander and Cassandra simply nodded in agreement with their parents' choices. As Sophia turned to fetch their drinks, she couldn't shake the feeling of unease that settled in the pit of her stomach. There was something in the Blackwoods' demeanor that set her on edge, a coldness that seemed to chill the very air around them. Throughout the meal, Sophia did her best to anticipate the family's every need, refilling glasses before they were empty and ensuring each course was served with impeccable timing. Despite her efforts, she could feel the weight of their critical gazes, could hear the barely concealed contempt in their voices as they addressed her. It was as she was clearing away the main course plates that disaster struck. As Sophia reached across the table to collect Jonathan Blackwood's plate, her elbow accidentally brushed against Cassandra's glass, sending a cascade of water across the young woman's designer dress. Time seemed to stand still as Cassandra's shriek of outrage pierced the air. "You clumsy, worthless girl," she screeched, leaping to her feet. "Do you have any idea how much this dress costs? It's probably worth more than you make in a year." Sophia's face burned with shame as she stammered out apologies, frantically trying to mop up the spilled water with her apron. "I'm so sorry, Miss Blackwood. It was an accident, I swear. Please, let me help dash." "Don't you dare touch me," Cassandra snarled, slapping Sophia's hand away. "You've done enough damage already. I want to speak to the manager immediately." As if summoned by the commotion, Mr. Thompson appeared at the table, his face ashen. "Is there a problem here?" he asked, his voice trembling slightly as he took in the scene before him. Victoria Blackwood rose to her feet, her eyes flashing dangerously. "Problem? This incompetent waitress has ruined our entire dining experience. Not only is she clumsy and slow, but she's also managed to destroy my daughter's couture dress. We demand that she be fired immediately." Sophia felt her world crumbling around her as she listened to the Blackwoods' tirade. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes, but she blinked them back furiously, determined not to give them the satisfaction of seeing her cry. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the din of the restaurant. "I need this job. It was an honest mistake, and I'm truly sorry. I'll do anything to make it right." Jonathan Blackwood fixed her with a cold stare, his lip curling in disgust. "Anything? How about you get down on your knees and beg for forgiveness? That might be a start." A collective gasp rippled through the restaurant as patrons and staff alike turned to watch the unfolding drama. Sophia stood frozen, her mind reeling from the cruel demand. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to preserve what little dignity she had left, but the thought of losing her job, of not being able to pay her rent or send money back to her ailing grandmother in Mexico, rooted her to the spot. With trembling legs, Sophia slowly sank to her knees, her eyes fixed on the polished floor. "Please," she began, her voice quavering. "I beg your forgiveness. I dash." "Stop right there." A commanding voice cut through the tension like a knife. Sophia looked up to see a tall, elegantly dressed woman striding towards their table, her green eyes blazing with righteous fury. "Aunt Eleanor?" Alexander exclaimed, his face paling as he recognized the newcomer. "What are you doing here?" Eleanor Blackwood, Jonathan's younger sister and a renowned philanthropist, surveyed the scene with a mixture of shock and disgust. "I came to surprise you all for lunch, but it seems I'm the one who's in for a surprise." "Jonathan, Victoria, what on earth do you think you're doing?" As Eleanor helped Sophia to her feet, the young waitress couldn't help but notice the striking resemblance between the kind-hearted woman and the cruel family she had just been serving. It was as if she were looking at two sides of the same coin, one polished and gleaming with compassion, the other tarnished by arrogance and contempt. "Eleanor, you don't understand," Jonathan began, but his sister cut him off with a sharp gesture. "Oh, I understand perfectly," Eleanor snapped. "I understand that you've forgotten everything our parents taught us about kindness and respect. I understand that you're so blinded by your own privilege that you can't see the humanity in those you deem beneath you." She turned to Sophia, her expression softening. "I'm so sorry for my family's behavior, my dear. Please, tell me your name." "Sophia," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sophia Martinez." Eleanor's eyes widened in recognition. "Martinez? Are you by any chance related to Maria Martinez?" Sophia nodded, confusion evident on her face. "Yes, she's my grandmother." "How did you dash?" "Oh, my dear girl," Eleanor breathed, pulling Sophia into a warm embrace. "Your grandmother saved my life many years ago when I was volunteering in Mexico. I've been searching for her family for years, hoping to repay the debt I owe her." As Eleanor released her, Sophia's mind whirled with questions. How could this elegant woman know her humble grandmother? And why did she speak of a debt? Before she could voice her thoughts, Eleanor turned back to her family, her expression hardening once more. "I think it's time we had a serious discussion about the values that truly matter in this world. Jonathan, Victoria, I expected better from you. And as for you too," she said, addressing Alexander and Cassandra, "I think it's high time you learned the value of hard work and humility." With that, Eleanor linked her arm through Sophia's and began leading her away from the table. "Mr. Thompson," she called over her shoulder, "I'd like to speak with you in private about Ms. Martinez's future here. I have a feeling she's destined for great things." As they walked away, leaving the stunned Blackwood family in their wake, Sophia felt as though she were in a dream. The events of the past hour seemed too fantastical to be real, yet the gentle pressure of Eleanor's hand on her arm anchored her to reality. "I know you must have 1,000 questions," Eleanor said softly as they reached a quiet corner of the restaurant. "And I promise I'll answer them all. But first, I want you to know that from this moment on, your life is about to change in ways you never imagined." Sophia's heart raced with a mixture of fear and excitement. As she looked into Eleanor's kind eyes, she felt a glimmer of hope ignite within her, a hope that perhaps, just perhaps, her dreams of a better life were not as far out of reach as she had once believed. Little did Sophia know that this chance encounter was merely the beginning of an extraordinary journey, one that would test her strength, challenge her beliefs, and ultimately reveal a truth about her own identity that would shake the very foundations of the Blackwood family empire. As the first rays of the setting sun painted the New York skyline in hues of gold and crimson, Sophia Martinez stood on the precipice of a new chapter in her life. The humble waitress who had entered the Golden Spoon that morning was gone, replaced by a woman on the cusp of discovering her true destiny. The stage was set for a tale of redemption, revenge, and unexpected love, a story that would captivate the hearts of all who witnessed it unfold. As the sun dipped below the New York City skyline, casting long shadows across the bustling streets, Sophia Martinez found herself in a state of bewildered excitement. The events of the day had unfolded like a surreal dream, transforming her life in ways she could never have imagined when she'd stepped into the Golden Spoon that morning. Eleanor Blackwood's warm hand on her arm guided Sophia through the restaurant and into a sleek, black town car waiting outside. As they settled into the plush leather seats, Sophia's mind raced with questions, her heart pounding with a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. "I know you must be overwhelmed," Eleanor said softly, her green eyes filled with compassion. "But I promise you, Sophia, everything will become clear soon. For now, why don't you tell me about yourself and your grandmother?" As the car glided through the city streets, Sophia found herself pouring out her life story to this kind stranger who seemed to hold the key to unlocking the mysteries of her past. She spoke of her childhood in a small Mexican village, of the grandmother who had raised her after her parents' tragic death in a car accident, and of her dreams of building a better life in America. "Abuela always told me that our family had a great legacy," Sophia said, her voice thick with emotion. "But we were so poor, I never understood what she meant. She would show me this old locket and say that one day, it would lead me to my true destiny." Eleanor's eyes widened with recognition. "This locket," she said urgently, "do you have it with you?" With trembling hands, Sophia reached beneath her collar and pulled out a delicate gold chain. Hanging from it was an intricately carved heart-shaped locket, its surface dulled by age but still beautiful. Eleanor gasped, tears springing to her eyes. "Oh, Sophia," she whispered, "you have no idea how long I've searched for this locket, and for you." As the car pulled up to a magnificent townhouse on the Upper East Side, Eleanor composed herself and turned to Sophia with a serious expression. "What I'm about to tell you will change everything you thought you knew about yourself and your family. Are you ready to hear the truth?" Sophia nodded, her heart racing as she followed Eleanor into the opulent foyer of the townhouse. The walls were adorned with priceless artwork, and a grand staircase swept upwards, its mahogany banister gleaming in the soft light of a crystal chandelier. Eleanor led Sophia to a cozy study, gesturing for her to take a seat in a plush armchair. As they settled in, Eleanor began to speak, her voice low and intense. 30 years ago, I was a young, idealistic woman volunteering in Mexico. I fell in love with a local man named Carlos, and we planned to marry against my family's wishes. But there were powerful people who didn't want our union to succeed, people who would stop at nothing to keep us apart. Sophia listened, spellbound, as Eleanor recounted a tale of forbidden love, family betrayal, and a desperate plan to protect an innocent child. Your mother, Isabella, was my best friend, Eleanor continued, her eyes misting with tears. She and her husband, Miguel, agreed to take my baby, my daughter, and raise her as their own to keep her safe from those who would harm her. That baby was you, Sophia. You are my daughter, and the true heir to the Blackwood fortune. The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Sophia struggled to process this earth-shattering revelation. But, how? Why didn't you come for me sooner? Eleanor's face crumpled with guilt and sorrow. I tried, my darling. For years, I searched for you, but Isabella and Miguel had hidden you so well. It wasn't until I heard about Maria Martinez's granddaughter working at the Golden Spoon that I dared to hope I'd finally found you. As the truth of her identity sank in, Sophia's mind whirled with implications. She was no longer just Sophia Martinez, struggling waitress, she was Sophia Blackwood, heiress to one of New York's most powerful families. What happens now? Sophia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Eleanor squeezed her hand reassuringly. Now, my dear, we begin the process of introducing you to your rightful place in society. But more importantly, we start to build the relationship we were robbed of all those years ago. Over the next few weeks, Sophia's life transformed at a dizzying pace. She moved into Eleanor's townhouse, trading her tiny studio apartment for a luxurious suite that was bigger than her entire childhood home. A team of stylists, etiquette coaches, and tutors descended upon her, tasked with molding the humble waitress into a polished socialite worthy of the Blackwood name. But even as Sophia struggled to adapt to her new reality, she couldn't shake the memory of the cruel treatment she'd endured at the hands of the Blackwood family, her family, at the Golden Spoon. The sting of humiliation and the burning desire for justice simmered beneath her newly acquired designer clothes and carefully cultivated manners. One evening, as Sophia stood before a full-length mirror, barely recognizing the elegant young woman who stared back at her, Eleanor entered the room with a mischievous glint in her eye. "Are you ready for your debut, my dear?" she asked, a sly smile playing at her lips. Sophia turned, confusion evident on her face. Debut? I thought the gala wasn't for another month. Eleanor's smile widened. Oh, I'm not talking about the gala. I have something far more satisfying in mind. How would you like to pay a little visit to the Golden Spoon? A thrill of anticipation shot through Sophia as she realized what her mother was proposing. This was her chance to confront those who had humiliated her, to show them the true power of the woman they had so carelessly dismissed. The following evening, Sophia found herself once again standing before the doors of the Golden Spoon. But this time, she wasn't wearing a threadbare uniform and sensible shoes. Instead, she was a vision in a stunning crimson gown, her chestnut hair swept into an elegant updo, and diamonds glittering at her throat and ears. As she entered the restaurant on Eleanor's arm, a hush fell over the dining room. All eyes turned to take in the breathtaking newcomer, whispers of admiration and curiosity rippling through the crowd. Mr. Thompson, who had been hovering anxiously near the host's stand, nearly tripped over his own feet in his haste to greet them. Ms. Blackwood. What an unexpected pleasure. I had no idea you were joining us this evening. And who is this lovely young lady? Eleanor's eyes danced with barely suppressed glee as she prepared to drop the bombshell. Why, Mr. Thompson, Surely you recognize your former employee. This is my daughter, Sophia Blackwood. The color drained from Mr. Thompson's face as recognition dawned. His mouth opened and closed several times, but no sound emerged as he struggled to reconcile the elegant woman before him with the humble waitress he had so callously dismissed. As word of Sophia's true identity spread through the restaurant like wildfire, she caught sight of a familiar group seated at the best table in the house. The Blackwood family, Jonathan, Victoria, Alexander, and Cassandra, sat frozen in shock, their expressions a comical mix of disbelief and horror. With her head held high and a confident smile on her lips, Sophia approached their table, Eleanor at her side. "Good evening," she said, her voice clear and strong. "I believe we have some unfinished business to discuss." Jonathan was the first to recover, rising to his feet with a forced smile. "Sophia, my dear niece, what a surprise. We had no idea dash." "No, you didn't," Sophia cut him off, her tone polite but steely. "You had no idea that the waitress you humiliated and demanded to see on her knees was actually your own flesh and blood. Tell me, Uncle Jonathan, does that change how you view your actions?" Victoria's face had turned an interesting shade of green, while Cassandra looked as though she might faint at any moment. Alexander, however, couldn't take his eyes off Sophia, a mix of admiration and regret evident in his gaze. "I think," Eleanor interjected smoothly, "that we have much to discuss as a family. Perhaps we should continue this conversation in private?" As Eleanor led the shell-shocked Blackwoods to a private dining room, leaving a wake of stunned onlookers behind them, Sophia felt a surge of triumph. She had faced her tormentors and emerged victorious, armed with the truth of her identity and the strength of her character. But even as she savored this moment of vindication, Sophia couldn't help but feel a twinge of uncertainty. The path ahead was fraught with challenges, navigating the treacherous waters of high society, reconciling with a family that had treated her so cruelly, and staying true to herself in a world of glittering facades and hidden agendas. Little did Sophia know that her appearance at the Golden Spoon had set in motion a chain of events that would shake the very foundations of New York's elite. As news of the long-lost Blackwood heiress spread through gossip columns and social media, old secrets began to resurface, and long-buried rivalries reignited. In the coming weeks, Sophia would find herself at the center of a storm of intrigue, betrayal, and unexpected alliances. The humble waitress who had once dreamed of a better life was about to learn that with great power comes great danger, and that in the world of the ultra-wealthy, nothing is ever as it seems. As the private dining room door closed behind them, sealing the Blackwood family in for what promised to be an explosive confrontation, Sophia took a deep breath. She had won this battle, but the war for her place in this new world was only just beginning. Across town, in a dimly lit office overlooking Central Park, a figure sat shrouded in shadow, a glass of scotch in one hand and a newspaper bearing Sophia's photograph in the other. A slow, dangerous smile spread across the unseen face as a plan began to form, a plan that would test Sophia's newfound strength to its very limits and threaten everything she held dear. The stage was set for a drama that would captivate the city and change the lives of all involved forever. And at the center of it all stood Sophia Blackwood, the waitress-turned-heiress, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead with the same grace and determination that had carried her through years of struggle. As the night deepened and the city lights twinkled like stars against the dark sky, Sophia stood at the window of the private dining room, momentarily alone with her thoughts. The muffled sounds of her family's heated discussion filtered through the closed door, but she tuned them out, focusing instead on the reflection of the strong, confident woman she saw in the glass. "I won't let them break me," she whispered to herself, her hand closing around the locket that had led her to this moment. "I am Sophia Blackwood, and I am ready for whatever comes next." Little did she know that whatever comes next would test her in ways she could never have imagined, pushing her to the very limits of her strength, compassion, and newfound power. The saga of Sophia Blackwood was only just beginning, and New York City would never be the same. The weeks following Sophia's dramatic revelation at the Golden Spoon were a whirlwind of activity, emotions, and unexpected challenges. As the dust began to settle on that fateful night, the young heiress found herself thrust into a world she had only ever glimpsed from afar, a world of glittering galas, cutthroat business dealings, and carefully guarded secrets. The Blackwood family, still reeling from the shock of Sophia's true identity, struggled to come to terms with her presence in their lives. Jonathan, ever the pragmatist, quickly realized the potential advantages of embracing his long-lost niece and began maneuvering to use her newfound status to the family's benefit. Victoria, on the other hand, remained coldly distant, her icy demeanor a constant reminder of the cruel treatment Sophia had endured at her hands. It was Alexander, however, who surprised Sophia the most. The young man who had once looked through her as if she were invisible now sought her out at every opportunity, his eyes filled with a mixture of admiration and regret. As the days passed, Sophia found herself drawn to her cousin despite her better judgment, their shared experiences as the younger generation of Blackwoods creating an unexpected bond. One afternoon, as Sophia sat in the library of the Blackwood mansion, poring over documents detailing the family's vast business empire, Alexander appeared in the doorway, his expression uncharacteristically hesitant. "Sophia," he began, running a hand through his tousled hair, "I know I have no right to ask this of you, but can we talk? There's something I need to say." Looking up from her papers, Sophia regarded him warily. Despite the warmth that had grown between them, she couldn't forget the way he had stood by silently as his sister humiliated her at the Golden Spoon. "What is it, Alexander?" He crossed the room and sank into the chair opposite her, his normally confident demeanor replaced by genuine remorse. "I want to apologize," he said, his voice low and earnest. "For everything. For the way we treated you, for not standing up to my parents and Cassandra. I was a coward, and I'm ashamed of the person I was that day." Sophia's heart constricted at the raw emotion in his voice. She wanted to forgive him, to believe that people could change, but the scars of her past ran deep. "Why should I believe you've changed?" she asked, her tone more curious than accusatory. Alexander leaned forward, his eyes never leaving hers. "Because you've shown me what true strength looks like," he said softly. "Watching you navigate this world with such grace and kindness, even after everything we put you through, it's made me want to be a better person. You've inspired me, Sophia." As she looked into his eyes, Sophia saw something that made her breath catch, a spark of the same passion for justice and change that burned within her. In that moment, she realized that perhaps she had found an unexpected ally in her quest to reform the Blackwood family from within. "I appreciate your apology, Alexander," she said finally, a small smile playing at her lips. "And I believe in second chances. Maybe together, we can work towards making the Blackwood name stand for something more than just wealth and power." The genuine smile that lit up Alexander's face sent an unexpected flutter through Sophia's heart, a feeling she quickly pushed aside. There was no room for romantic entanglements in her life right now, not when she had so much to learn and so many wrongs to right. As the days turned into weeks, Sophia threw herself into understanding every aspect of the Blackwood empire. Under Eleanor's guidance, she attended board meetings, pored over financial reports, and began to form her own vision for the future of the company. Her background as a waitress, once a source of shame in the eyes of the Blackwoods, became her greatest strength as she advocated for better treatment of employees and more ethical business practices. But not everyone was thrilled with the changes Sophia was proposing. At a tense board meeting, Jonathan Blackwood's face turned an alarming shade of red as Sophia presented her plan to increase wages for the lowest-paid workers in their hotels and restaurants. "This is preposterous," he thundered, slamming his fist on the polished mahogany table. "These bleeding heart policies will bankrupt us. I won't stand for it." Sophia stood her ground, her chin raised defiantly. "Uncle Jonathan, these people are the backbone of our company. Treating them fairly isn't just the right thing to do, it's good business. Happy employees lead to better service, which leads to more satisfied customers and increased profits. As the other board members murmured amongst themselves, some nodding in agreement with Sophia's points, Eleanor stepped in, her voice calm but firm. "I think Sophia's ideas have merit, Jonathan. Perhaps it's time we considered a fresh perspective." The look Jonathan shot his sister could have melted steel, but he held his tongue, knowing that Eleanor's influence in the company was not to be underestimated. As the meeting adjourned, Sophia couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. It was a small victory, but an important one. However, Sophia's successes were not without their costs. As she gained more influence within the company and New York society, she found herself the target of increasingly vicious gossip and sabotage attempts. Anonymous tips to tabloids dredged up embarrassing stories from her past, while accidents at Blackwood properties always seemed to happen just before her scheduled visits. One evening, as Sophia prepared for a charity gala, she received a phone call that made her blood run cold. On the other end of the line was Mia, her former co-worker from the Golden Spoon. "Sophia," Mia's voice was trembling, "I don't know if I should be calling you, but something's happened. Mr. Thompson, he's been asking questions about you, digging into your past. And now he's missing. The police were at the restaurant today. I'm scared, Sophia. What if someone did something to him because of you?" The phone slipped from Sophia's grasp, clattering to the floor as the implications of Mia's words sank in. Had her rise to power put her former boss in danger? Was she responsible for whatever had happened to Mr. Thompson? As she bent to retrieve the phone, Sophia caught sight of her reflection in the full-length mirror. The woman staring back at her was a far cry from the timid waitress she had once been. Dressed in a stunning emerald gown, diamonds glittering at her throat, she looked every inch the Blackwood heiress. But beneath the polished exterior, she could see the fear and uncertainty in her own eyes. "Mia," she said, her voice steadier than she felt, "I need you to tell me everything you know. And please, be careful. If someone is targeting people from my past, you could be in danger too." As Mia recounted the events of the past few days, Sophia's mind raced. Who could be behind Mr. Thompson's disappearance? Was it someone trying to protect her by silencing a potential threat to her new identity? Or was there a more sinister force at work, someone who saw her as a threat to the status quo? A soft knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. "Sophia?" Eleanor's voice called out. "The car is waiting. Are you ready to go?" Taking a deep breath, Sophia smoothed her gown and squared her shoulders. "Just a moment, Mother," she replied, her voice betraying none of the turmoil she felt inside. As she opened the door and stepped out to join Eleanor, Sophia made a silent vow. She would use every resource at her disposal to find out what had happened to Mr. Thompson and to protect those who had been part of her former life. The Blackwood name and fortune gave her power, and it was time she learned to wield it. The charity gala was in full swing when Sophia and Eleanor arrived, the glittering ballroom of the Plaza Hotel filled with New York's elite. As they made their entrance, heads turned and whispers rippled through the crowd. Sophia had become the talk of the town, her rags-to-riches story captivating the public imagination. As she moved through the room, exchanging pleasantries and air kisses with people she was still struggling to remember, Sophia's mind remained focused on the mystery of Mr. Thompson's disappearance. She scanned the faces around her, wondering if the person responsible for this latest threat was among them, hiding behind a mask of champagne smiles and idle chatter. Her reverie was interrupted by a familiar voice. "You look lost in thought, cousin. Penny for your thoughts?" Sophia turned to find Alexander at her elbow, looking dashing in a perfectly tailored tuxedo. Despite her worries, she couldn't help but smile at his presence. Just wondering how many of these people actually care about the cause we're here to support, she lied smoothly, not ready to share her concerns about Mr. Thompson. Alexander's eyes twinkled with amusement. Probably about 10%, he said in a conspiratorial whisper. The rest are here to see and be seen. Speaking of which, there's someone I think you should meet. He guided her through the crowd towards a distinguished-looking man in his early 60s. Sophia, allow me to introduce you to Senator James Harper. Senator, this is my cousin, Sophia Blackwood. The senator's handshake was firm, his smile practiced but warm. Miss Blackwood, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. I've heard a great deal about the changes you're proposing at Blackwood Industries. Very impressive. As they engaged in polite conversation, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this introduction than mere social niceties. Her suspicions were confirmed when the senator leaned in, his voice low and urgent. Miss Blackwood, I wonder if I might have a word with you in private. There's a matter of some delicacy I'd like to discuss. Intrigued and slightly wary, Sophia nodded her assent. As they made their way to a quiet corner of the ballroom, she caught Alexander's eye. He gave her a subtle nod, as if to say, "Trust me." Once they were out of earshot of the other guests, Senator Harper's demeanor changed, the politician's mask slipping to reveal genuine concern. Miss Blackwood, I'm not sure if you're aware, but there have been rumors circulating in certain circles. Rumors about irregularities in some of Blackwood Industries' overseas operations. Sophia's heart raced, but she kept her expression neutral. What kind of irregularities, Senator? He hesitated, glancing around to ensure they weren't overheard. The kind that could lead to a federal investigation if they're proven true. I'm telling you this as a friend of the family, Miss Blackwood. Your Uncle Jonathan has made some powerful enemies over the years, and they're circling like sharks, looking for any weakness. As the implications of the senator's words sank in, Sophia felt as though the ground was shifting beneath her feet. Could this be connected to Mr. Thompson's disappearance? Was someone targeting the Blackwood family through her? Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Senator, she said, her mind already racing with possibilities. I assure you, I'll look into these rumors immediately. As she made her way back to the main party, Sophia's thoughts were in turmoil. She had known that taking her place in the Blackwood family would come with challenges, but she hadn't anticipated anything like this. The stakes were suddenly much higher than she had ever imagined. Across the room, she caught sight of Jonathan deep in conversation with a group of men she didn't recognize. His face was flushed, his gestures more animated than usual. Was it just the effects of too much champagne, or was he aware of the storm that was brewing? As the night wore on, Sophia found herself watching her family members with new eyes. Victoria, elegant as always in a designer gown, moved through the crowd like a shark through water, her smile never quite reaching her eyes. Cassandra, surrounded by a group of admiring young men, laughed too loudly at their jokes, her gaze constantly darting around the room as if searching for someone. And then there was Eleanor, the woman who had brought Sophia into this world of wealth and privilege. As Sophia watched her mother work the room, she couldn't help but wonder how much Eleanor knew about the family's secrets. Was she truly as noble as she seemed, or was there more to her story than she had revealed? As the gala began to wind down, Sophia found herself on the terrace, seeking a moment of solitude to clear her head. The cool night air was a welcome relief after the stuffy ballroom, and she took a deep breath, trying to center herself. Quite a night, isn't it? A voice said from the shadows, causing Sophia to start. She turned to see a man she didn't recognize step into the light. He was tall and lean, with silver hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to look right through her. I'm sorry, I don't think we've been introduced, Sophia said, fighting to keep her voice steady as alarm bells rang in her head. The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. No, we haven't. But I know all about you, Sophia Martinez, or should I say, Sophia Blackwood? Before Sophia could respond, the man continued, his voice low and menacing. You've stirred up quite a hornet's nest, my dear. The question is, Are you prepared for what comes next?" As he turned to leave, he paused, tossing one last comment over his shoulder. "Oh, and if you're wondering about your old friend Mr. Thompson, let's just say he's taking an extended vacation. Whether he returns or not depends entirely on you." With that, he melted back into the shadows, leaving Sophia frozen in place, her mind reeling from the encounter. As the implications of his words sank in, she realized that the game she had unwittingly entered was far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. Back in the ballroom, the party continued, the laughter and music a stark contrast to the turmoil in Sophia's heart. As she rejoined her family, plastering a smile on her face, she knew that nothing would ever be the same again. The fairy tale of the waitress turned heiress had taken a dark turn, and Sophia Blackwood was about to face the fight of her life. Little did she know that the mysterious man on the terrace was just the tip of the iceberg. In the coming days, Sophia would uncover a web of lies, betrayal, and long-buried secrets that would shake the Blackwood family to its core. And at the center of it all was a truth so shocking that it threatened to destroy everything she had come to love. As the last of the guests departed and the Blackwood family prepared to leave, Sophia caught Alexander's eye across the room. The concern in his gaze told her that he had noticed something was amiss. In that moment, she made a decision. If she was going to survive the storm that was coming, she would need allies. And perhaps, just perhaps, her cousin could be the first. The car ride back to the Blackwood mansion was silent, each family member lost in their own thoughts. As they pulled up to the grand entrance, Sophia steeled herself for what was to come. The naive waitress who had entered this world was gone, replaced by a woman determined to uncover the truth, no matter the cost. As she stepped out of the car, the cool night air carrying the scent of impending rain, Sophia looked up at the imposing facade of the Blackwood mansion. It no longer seemed like a fairy tale castle, but a fortress hiding dark secrets. With a deep breath, she squared her shoulders and walked inside, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Little did Sophia know that her journey was far from over. The events set in motion that night would lead her down a path of discovery, danger, and ultimately, redemption. The true test of her character was yet to come, and the fate of not just the Blackwood family, but perhaps the entire city, hung in the balance. As the mansion doors closed behind her, sealing Sophia into the world she had fought so hard to join, the stage was set for a final act that would keep New York talking for years to come. The humble waitress who had risen to such great heights was about to face her greatest challenge yet, and the outcome would determine not just her future, but the future of everyone she held dear. The days following the charity gala were a whirlwind of activity and mounting tension within the Blackwood household. Sophia, still reeling from the mysterious man's ominous warning on the terrace, found herself walking a precarious tightrope between her newfound family obligations and her determination to uncover the truth about Mr. Thompson's disappearance. As she sat in her plush office at Blackwood Industries, surrounded by reports and financial statements, Sophia couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. Every creak of the old building, every whispered conversation in the hallway, set her nerves on edge. The weight of the secrets she now carried pressed down on her like a physical force, threatening to crush her beneath their burden. A soft knock on the door jolted her from her thoughts. "Come in," she called, quickly composing herself. Alexander stepped into the room, his usually carefree expression replaced by one of concern. "Sophia, do you have a moment? There's something I need to discuss with you." As he closed the door behind him, Sophia felt a flutter of anticipation in her stomach. Over the past weeks, she had come to rely on Alexander's steady presence and sharp mind. Despite their rocky start, he had proven to be a valuable ally in navigating the treacherous waters of high society and corporate politics. "Of course, Alex. What's on your mind?" she asked, gesturing for him to take a seat. Alexander ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit she had come to recognize. "It's about Uncle Jonathan," he began, his voice low. "I've noticed some discrepancies in the company's overseas accounts." At first, I thought it was just an accounting error, but the more I dig, the more it looks like. Like what? Sophia prompted, her heart racing. Like money laundering, Alexander finished, his eyes meeting hers with a mix of fear and determination. Sophia, I think Uncle Jonathan might be involved in something illegal. And if I've noticed it, you can bet others have too. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place in Sophia's mind, the senator's warnings, the mysterious man's threats, Mr. Thompson's disappearance. It all pointed to a web of corruption that stretched far beyond anything she had imagined. We need to be careful, Alex, she said, reaching across the desk to squeeze his hand. If what you're saying is true, we could be in danger. We need proof before we can act. As they began to formulate a plan to investigate further, neither of them noticed the shadow that passed by the frosted glass of Sophia's office door, or the soft click of a listening device being deactivated. Over the next few days, Sophia and Alexander worked tirelessly to uncover the truth behind the Blackwood family's secrets. Late nights poring over financial records and clandestine meetings with trusted employees began to paint a picture of a vast conspiracy that reached the highest levels of the company and beyond. But as they delved deeper into the mystery, the danger around them grew. Sophia began to notice unfamiliar cars parked outside her apartment, and more than once she caught glimpses of men in dark suits following her through the city streets. One evening, as she was leaving the office, Sophia's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, "Meet me at the Golden Spoon. Come alone. Your old friend's life depends on it." Her heart pounding, Sophia debated her options. Every instinct screamed at her to call the police, to tell Alexander or Eleanor. But the thought of Mr. Thompson, who had given her a chance when no one else would, potentially suffering because of her, steeled her resolve. As she pushed open the doors of the Golden Spoon, memories of her former life came flooding back. The restaurant was closed for the night, the dining room eerily silent and bathed in shadows. At a table in the far corner sat a figure she recognized all too well, the silver-haired man from the charity gala. "Ah, Miss Blackwood," he said, his voice as smooth and dangerous as a serpent's hiss. "How kind of you to join me. Please, have a seat." As Sophia approached the table, she noticed a manila envelope sitting before the man. "Who are you?" she demanded, fighting to keep her voice steady. "And what have you done with Mr. Thompson?" The man's lips curled into a cold smile. "Who I am is not important. What matters is what I know about you, about your family, and about the rather impressive house of cards you've all built." He slid the envelope across the table. "Inside, you'll find evidence of your uncle's indiscretions. Money laundering, bribery, even a few unsavory dealings with some rather unpleasant characters overseas. Enough to bring down not just Jonathan, but the entire Blackwood empire." Sophia's mind raced as she processed his words. "What do you want?" she asked, though she already feared she knew the answer. "It's quite simple, my dear," the man replied, leaning back in his chair. "You're going to take this evidence to the authorities. You'll play the part of the shocked, innocent heiress who stumbled upon her family's corruption. The Blackwood name will be ruined, the company will crumble, and you, well, you'll be the tragic figure at the center of it all, won't you?" Sophia's hands clenched into fists beneath the table. "And if I refuse?" The man's eyes hardened. "Then Mr. Thompson's unfortunate disappearance will become permanent. And he won't be the only one. Your friend Mia, your grandmother in Mexico, it would be a shame if anything were to happen to them, wouldn't it?" As the full weight of the situation crashed down upon her, Sophia felt as though she were drowning. Everything she had gained, everything she had worked for, was balanced on a knife's edge. And the lives of innocent people hung in the balance. "I'll need time to think," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. The man stood, straightening his immaculate suit. "You have 24 hours, Miss Blackwood. Choose wisely. As he walked away, leaving Sophia alone in the darkened restaurant, she felt the walls closing in around her. She had entered this world of wealth and privilege thinking she could change it for the better, but now she found herself trapped in a web of lies and betrayal that threatened to destroy everything and everyone she cared about. With trembling hands, she reached for her phone and dialed the one person she knew she could trust. "Alex," she said as soon as he answered, "I need your help. Meet me at my apartment in an hour. And be careful. I think we're in more danger than we realized." As she stepped out into the cool night air, Sophia felt a steely resolve settling over her. She had risen from humble beginnings to claim her place in one of New York's most powerful families. She had faced humiliation and triumph, love and betrayal. And now, with the fate of so many resting on her shoulders, she knew that the true test of her character was about to begin. Little did she know that the events of the next 24 hours would not only determine her future but would shake the very foundations of New York society. The final act of Sophia Blackwood's incredible journey was about to unfold, and the city would never be the same again. The next morning dawned gray and overcast, as if the very sky was reflecting the turmoil in Sophia's heart. After a sleepless night spent strategizing with Alexander, she had come to a decision that would change everything. As she walked into Blackwood Industries' imposing headquarters, Sophia felt the weight of every eye upon her. News of her clandestine meeting at the Golden Spoon had somehow leaked, and the air was thick with tension and speculation. In the boardroom, she found the entire Blackwood clan waiting: Jonathan, his face a mask of barely contained fury; Victoria, her icy composure cracking to reveal a hint of fear; Cassandra, uncharacteristically subdued; and Eleanor, whose eyes shone with a mixture of pride and concern as they met Sophia's across the room. "Well, niece," Jonathan spat the word like a curse, "I hear you've been busy. Care to explain why you were seen meeting with a known corporate saboteur last night?" Sophia took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders as she faced her family. "I'm glad you're all here," she began, her voice steady despite the rapid beating of her heart. "There's something we need to discuss, something that affects all of us." With deliberate movements, she placed the manila envelope on the table, watching as recognition and fear flickered across Jonathan's face. "Uncle Jonathan," she said softly, "I think it's time you told us the truth about what's really been going on with the company's overseas operations." For a moment, the room was so silent you could have heard a pin drop. Then, like a dam breaking, chaos erupted. Jonathan lunged for the envelope, Victoria let out a strangled cry, and Cassandra burst into tears. But it was Eleanor who surprised them all. With a swift movement, she snatched the envelope from the table, her face a storm of emotions. "Enough," she thundered, her voice cutting through the pandemonium. "It's time the truth came out, all of it." Over the next hour, as rain began to lash against the boardroom windows, a story unfolded that was more shocking and heartbreaking than anything Sophia could have imagined. Eleanor revealed a tale of love, betrayal, and sacrifice that stretched back decades, a tale that explained not only the current crisis but the very reasons for Sophia's hidden identity and separation from her true family. It turned out that Jonathan's illegal activities were just the tip of the iceberg. The Blackwood empire had been built on a foundation of secrets and lies, with Eleanor at the center of it all, trying desperately to hold everything together while protecting those she loved. As the full picture emerged, Sophia felt as though she were seeing her family, and herself, clearly for the first time. The villains and heroes she had imagined were replaced by complex, flawed human beings, each carrying their own burdens and fighting their own battles. In that moment of clarity, Sophia knew what she had to do. With tears in her eyes but determination in her voice, she laid out a plan that would save the company, protect the innocent, and give them all a chance at redemption. It wouldn't be easy. They would have to come clean about years of misdeeds, make reparations to those they had wronged, and rebuild the Blackwood name from the ground up. But together, as a family united by truth rather than divided by lies, they had a chance. As Sophia spoke, she saw something change in the eyes of those around her. The fear and anger began to fade, replaced by a glimmer of hope. Even Jonathan, who had been the architect of so much pain, seemed to deflate, the weight of his secrets finally lifting from his shoulders. But their ordeal was far from over. No sooner had Sophia finished outlining her plan than the boardroom doors burst open, revealing a team of FBI agents led by none other than Senator Harper. "I'm sorry it's come to this," the senator said, his eyes meeting Sophia's with a mixture of admiration and regret. "But you've done the right thing, Miss Blackwood. Your cooperation will be noted." As the agents began to read them their rights, Sophia felt Alexander's hand slip into hers, squeezing gently in silent support. She looked around at her family, not the perfect, polished Blackwoods of society pages and corporate annual reports, but the real, flawed, human being she had come to love despite everything. In that moment, she knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. The journey that had begun with a humble waitress being humiliated by arrogant customers had led her here, to a place of truth, of family, and of the kind of strength that comes from facing one's demons head-on. As they were led out of the boardroom, flashbulbs exploding from the horde of reporters that had gathered in the lobby, Sophia held her head high. The headline in tomorrow's papers might read "Blackwood Empire Crumbles," but she knew the real story was just beginning. In the months and years that followed, the tale of Sophia Blackwood became the stuff of legend in New York society. The waitress-turned-heiress who had brought down a corrupt empire only to build something stronger and more meaningful in its place. Blackwood Industries transformed under Sophia and Alexander's leadership, becoming a beacon of ethical business practices and social responsibility. Eleanor found peace in finally unburdening herself of the secrets she had carried for so long, devoting herself to charitable works that honored the memory of Sophia's parents. Jonathan and Victoria, after serving time for their roles in the scandal, emerged humbled and repentant, working tirelessly to make amends for their past misdeeds. Even Cassandra, stripped of her privileged facade, discovered a strength and resilience she never knew she possessed. And as for Mr. Thompson and Mia? They were found safe, their disappearance revealed to be an elaborate ruse orchestrated by the mysterious silver-haired man, who turned out to be a disillusioned former Blackwood employee seeking revenge. In the end, it was Sophia's compassion and forgiveness that brought him to justice, not her condemnation. On a warm summer evening, 5 years to the day after Sophia had first set foot in the Golden Spoon as a wide-eyed waitress, she stood on the terrace of the rebuilt Blackwood mansion, looking out over the twinkling lights of the city she had come to love. Alexander joined her, wrapping an arm around her waist and pressing a soft kiss to her temple. "Penny for your thoughts, Mrs. Blackwood?" he asked, his voice warm with affection. Sophia smiled, leaning into his embrace. Their journey from cousins to confidants to lovers had been an unexpected but beautiful part of her transformation. "Just thinking about how far we've come," she replied. "And how grateful I am for every step of the journey, even the painful ones." As if on cue, the terrace doors opened, and Eleanor emerged, cradling Sophia and Alexander's newborn daughter in her arms. "I think someone's ready to say goodnight to Mama and Papa," she said, her eyes twinkling with joy as she handed the baby to Sophia. Looking down at her daughter's tiny face, Sophia felt a wave of love and protectiveness wash over her. This child would grow up knowing only love and honesty, free from the burdens of secrets and lies that had weighed down previous generations of Blackwoods. "What do you think she'll be when she grows up?" Alexander mused, gently stroking his daughter's cheek. Sophia smiled, remembering a long-ago day when she had dreamed of a better life while wiping down tables at the Golden Spoon. "Anything she wants to be," she replied. "But I have a feeling she'll have her mother's strength and her father's kind heart." As the little family stood together, bathed in the warm glow of the setting sun, Sophia knew that her story, their story, was far from over. There would be new challenges to face, new battles to fight, and new triumphs to celebrate. But whatever came their way, they would face it together, bound by love, truth, and the unbreakable bonds of family. For Sophia Blackwood, once a humble waitress humiliated by arrogant customers, had discovered that true wealth lay not in money or power, but in the courage to be oneself and the strength to lift others up along the way. And that, she knew, was a legacy worth passing on to future generations. As night fell over New York City, the lights of the Blackwood mansion glowed warmly, a beacon of hope and redemption in a world that had once seemed so cold and unforgiving. And within its walls, a family that had been forged in the fires of adversity looked to the future with hearts full of love, gratitude, and the unshakable knowledge that together, they could overcome anything.